We're constantly told to be on the lookout for scams, but sometimes they're incredibly hard to pick. Tonight, how to spot the red flags on fake investments that are robbing Aussies of their life savings.
A scam has left Doris McAllister with a gaping hole in her retirement savings.
I just couldn't believe this would happen to me.
It took Edward and Joan 60 years to save their retirement nest egg, but it took just days for hackers to take the lot. And what's worse, they say their bank didn't act.
In that moment, I knew. I started panicking. Oh my goodness. I knew I was caught out.
Hello, I'm Deb Knight. Welcome to A Current Affair. $222,000 in just 13 minutes.
Your retirement account doesn't need a burglar. It needs one phone call from a man who already knows your bank's hold music, and it can be empty by lunchtime. Edward and Joan spent 60 years building theirs, $249,000 gone in 11 withdrawals over 3 days, while their own bank watched it happen. Tonight is about the syndicates doing this to ordinary Australians and the banks that had every chance to catch them and didn't. By the end, you'll know the 3 checks that would have stopped every scam in this video.
These good sports are being flawed by a sophisticated bunch of heartless hackers.
It went over 3 days. They took out 11 withdrawals. Do you want to know the amount?
I'm too scared to ask.
$249,000.
Edward is not careless with money. He is 86, he does his own banking online, and by his own account, he is not a 15-year-old. He knows his way around a screen. That is the detail worth sitting with, because the story you are about to hear was not built for someone naive. It was built, piece by piece, for someone exactly like him, comfortable enough with technology to trust it, and not suspicious enough of a message that looked like it came from Microsoft. It started with a text, a fake security alert warning that his account had been compromised, with a phone number attached to call immediately. Edward called it. The man on the other end talked him through securing the account, reading out a verification code just to confirm it's you. That code was the one thing standing between the scammer and his bank. Once Edward read it aloud, they were inside. Over the next 3 days, 11 separate withdrawals went out. $249,000, 60 years of a working life, saved a paycheck at a time, moved out of Edward and Joan's account while their bank's own fraud systems logged every single transfer and let each one through. Edward's story started with a text. The next one starts with something harder to spot. A phone call from a name that turned out to be real.
Yakimi Duprey was preyed upon by a sophisticated gang of ruthless, greedy and organised criminals.
I've been scammed out of $760,000.
Yakimi Duprey's money was not savings in the ordinary sense. It was her husband Zach's life insurance payout after he was killed in a road accident driving the family's belongings across the country. She was trying to do the responsible thing with it, lock in a fixed-rate deposit and buy a house for her children in Melbourne. She filled out an online form for what she believed was Macquarie Bank. Soon after, her phone rang. The man introduced himself as Mark Dickinson, British accent, polished, patient with her questions, and able to explain the process, in her words, exactly like I would have heard at 10 other banks. She did what any sensible person does before handing over money to a stranger. She looked him up. Mark Dickinson existed. He had a real LinkedIn profile, and he really did work at Macquarie Bank. He was simply not the man on the phone. The scammer had taken a real employee's identity and worn it like a coat, and there was nothing on the surface of that call for Yakimi to catch. $760,000. Her late husband's insurance payout, gone to a man impersonating a real banker at a real institution. And the account it landed in was already halfway offshore before anyone at either bank raised the alarm. The next case didn't even need a phone call. It arrived as a text, sitting inside a thread of real messages Tim Watkins had trusted for years.
$222,000 in just 13 minutes. That's how much Tim lost to an international scammer. His bank claims there is nothing it could do. Tim says more must be done.
Tim Watkins runs a marketing business. He describes himself as fairly savvy, not easily fooled, and he is exactly right about that, which is what makes his 13 minutes so useful to you. The text that started it did not arrive from an unknown number. It landed inside the same thread as hundreds of genuine messages from NAB, stretching back to January 2022, because the scammers had spoofed the bank's real sender ID. To Tim's phone, it looked identical to every legitimate alert the bank had ever sent him. It asked him to confirm a passcode for an $850 Amazon payment he hadn't made. He called the number on the message, which he now believes was the scammer's own line, not the bank's, and read out the one-time codes his real NAB app was generating in real time. 10 transactions later, his accounts were cleared. $222,000 out in 13 minutes, and his bank's response, his words, was that there was nothing it could do. That is the shape of every story tonight. Not a stranger asking for your PIN, a voice, a message, a thread that already looks exactly like the one you're real.
Bank uses. Built by people who have studied the real thing closely enough to copy it down to the font. The next person did everything by the book. Checked a license, checked a name, and it still wasn't a thing.
I feel like I've been responsible for trying to sort my life out now, and it's just put me back in the biggest hole.
Michelle Lowry thought she was investing in government and bank bonds when she lost $750,000 of her life savings.
Michelle Lowry was rebuilding. Her husband had died. She had 3 children to raise alone. And she was doing exactly what a careful, responsible person does with money that has to last. Shopping around for a safe, boring term deposit. She found a company calling itself EQR Securities, offering government and bank bonds. Before sending a cent, she checked they were registered with ASIC. She checked they carried a license number. She handed the paperwork to her own accountant to verify. Every box a cautious person is told to tick, Michelle ticked. She transferred her money through her local bank branch, in person, in December. She received confirmation the funds had arrived, and a login for an online portal where she could track her bonds. She logged in once. After that, the portal stopped working. The man she'd been dealing with stopped answering. And when she finally searched for the company's website, it had been taken down entirely. $750,000 of a widow's life savings, wearing the paperwork of a real financial license the whole way down. Here's what 4 cases like Michelle's tell an investigator that one case alone can't.
These levels of losses make it pretty clear that what we need is a coordinated effort across government, across institutions.
Losses by bank transfer are increasing fast.
None of these 4 are unlucky exceptions. They are the visible edge of an industry, because that is what this now is, an industry, with scripts, call centres, stolen employee identities, and enough patience to run a con for weeks before asking for a single dollar. And every one of the 4 had a bank standing directly between their money and the scammer, at the exact moment the transfer went through. Before this half closes, one more voice, because the 6th case shows the syndicates don't always ask you to invest. Sometimes they ask you to help. And here is where you might switch off, because it sounds like someone else's problem. A widow, a business owner, a couple in their 80s who should have known better. So let me point it at you directly. None of the 4 people you have just heard were reckless. They checked licenses, they Googled names, they used the same bank they'd banked with for decades. If your test for whether you're safe is, "I'd never fall for it," that is not a defense. It's the exact confidence every one of them had, right up until the money left.
Welcome back. Anne Miles thought she was helping police catch a scammer who'd hacked into her bank account. Instead, she lost her life savings in a sophisticated con.
Don't tell your son, don't tell your daughter, don't tell anybody.
Anne Miles's version had a twist the others didn't. She wasn't told she was investing, she was told she was helping. A caller claiming to be from her own bank's fraud team explained that a criminal had infiltrated her account and that to help catch him, she needed to move her savings into a secure holding account while they investigated, and that she should not discuss it with anyone, including her own son and daughter, in case it compromised the operation. The instruction to stay silent was not an accident. It was the entire mechanism. A scam that asks you to keep a secret from your own family is asking you to remove the one person most likely to spot it.
The ACCC wants banks to copy the UK, where it's harder to trick potential victims.
Consumers will be warned in the UK if there is a mismatch between, in effect, the account number and the account name that they are seeking to transfer funds to.
That single fix, a warning when the name on the account doesn't match the name you typed in, already exists in the United Kingdom. Australia's own banking industry has known about it for years and has still not rolled it out nationally, which is the thread this next half pulls on. Not just who is doing this to you, but who has had the tools to stop it and left them on the shelf. The scale behind these 7 stories is not a guess, and it is not exaggerated for television. It is measured, published, and getting worse. The National Anti-Scam Centre's own 2025 figures, the most recent full year on record, put combined reported scam losses at $2.18 billion, up nearly 8% on the year before. Investment scams like the one that swallowed Michelle Lowry's savings account for more of that than any other category. $837 million in a single year, more than the next 2 categories combined. And that money is not spread evenly across the population. Australians aged 65 and over made up just 17% of the country, and yet they carried 26.5% of every dollar reported lost to ScamWatch in 2025. $88.8 million from the exact age group these 7 stories all came from. Within that, investment scams specifically cost older Australians $50.8 million in a single year, the highest loss category for anyone over 65, ahead of phishing, ahead of romance scams, ahead of everything else combined. Here is the part that should make you angry rather than just frightened. None of this is invisible to the banks. Every one of the 7 transfers you have heard tonight moved through a licensed Australian financial institution, in daylight, through the ordinary front door of internet banking. Banks already hold the 2 pieces of information that would have stopped almost every case in this video: the name a customer types in and the actual registered name on the account they're sending to. When those 2 names don't match, the United Kingdom's banks are required to warn the customer before the transfer goes through. Australia's are not. Confirmation of payee, checking that the name matches the number before the money moves, is not new technology. The UK has run it for years. Australia's banking industry has been looking into it, in its own words, for that entire time, while the National Anti-Scam Centre keeps publishing the losses that a working version would have stopped. Every case in this video happened inside that gap. There is one more case worth hearing, because it is the one where the target got close enough to nearly stop it himself. 75-year-old Sirosh Kalapesi was shopping for a bond on a comparison website called Savings Connection, when a man called claiming to be from NAB, working through how many years Sirosh wanted and how much he was willing to invest,
the way a real account manager would. Sirosh sent a small trial transfer first, $59 and change, and it went through cleanly. The next day, he deposited $100,000, and this time his real bank, Commonwealth Bank, rang him at 8 in the morning. They'd frozen it because their own systems had flagged it as a likely fraud account. That is the version of this story where the safeguard actually worked. Sirosh, suspicious now, asked the scammer for his office address. The man promised to email it. Half an hour of silence later, Sirosh knew and got both banks and the police involved the same day, and the first, smaller transfer still could not be pulled back. That near miss is where the real lesson sits, because Sirosh's own bank found the fake in under a day, using exactly the kind of check the UK already runs by default. A fake company cannot use the real one's web address, so it has to get close. A letter swapped, a hyphen added, a full stop where there shouldn't be one. It cannot risk a phone number that traces back to a real office, so it hides behind an encrypted, anonymous email address or a 1-800 number that has no listed business behind it at all. And it will never give you a street address you can actually turn up to, because there isn't one. 3 checks, each one taking less time than the phone call itself. Does the web address match the real company letter for letter? Does the contact page show a normal business email rather than an encrypted, anonymous one? And will they give you an address you could visit today, not "we'll email it through"? Real institutions pass all 3 without hesitating. Every single scam in this video would have failed at least one.
And if you own your home outright, tonight, if your super is fully vested and your mortgage is paid off, and you have been listening to all of this as somebody else's misfortune, here is the part that should change how you hear it. You are not the target because you're careless. You are the target because you're the one with money sitting still. A 25-year-old with a car loan and no savings is not worth a scammer's month of patient scripted phone calls. You are. The very things that make your retirement secure, the paid-off house, the super balance, the decades of discipline, are the exact things that make you worth targeting in the first place. Michelle Lowry checked ASIC. Yakimi Duprey checked LinkedIn. Tim Watkins recognized the message thread. Edward read a code back that he believed was protecting his account. Every safeguard an ordinary careful Australian is told to use, one of these 7 people used correctly, and every one of them still lost the money, because the fraud was built to survive exactly that level of checking. Best case, from here, the confirmation of payee rule the UK already runs gets adopted here within the next reporting year, and the next Michelle Lowry gets a red warning on her banking app before her money leaves the account, not a support call after it's gone. Realistic case, the industry keeps looking into it. Reported losses keep climbing the way they climbed 7.8% this year alone, and the $249,000 taken from Edward and Joan becomes next year's rounding error inside a bigger total. Worst case, a scam that has already learned to fake a bank's phone number, clone a real employee's LinkedIn profile, and thread itself invisibly into a genuine NAB text conversation keeps getting better at all 3, faster than any bank rule can be written to catch it, and the next retirement account it empties is one you know personally. None of the 7 people in this video were unlucky, and none of them were careless. They were targeted, patiently and specifically, by organized syndicates running scripts polished enough to survive an ASIC check, a LinkedIn search, and a lifetime of banking habits. And every one of those transfers moved through an Australian bank that had the tools to flag a mismatched name and simply had not switched them on. The scammers built the trap. The banks left the door unlocked. $2.18 billion moved through that open door in 2025 alone, and the single fix that would close a meaningful share of it has been sitting on a shelf in London for years, unadopted here, while the losses climb again. Before you do anything else tonight, do these 5 things. First, if anyone calls claiming to be your bank, hang up and ring the number printed on your card yourself. Never the number they give you.
never the number in a text, even if the thread looks identical to every real message you've had for years. Second, never read a one-time passcode out loud to anyone who calls or texts you for any reason. Your real bank will never ask for it. That single code is the entire lock on your account. Third, if you're asked to keep an investment or a security matter secret from your own family, treat that instruction itself as the biggest red flag in the whole call. A legitimate bank or a legitimate investment has no reason to want your children kept in the dark. Fourth, before sending any money to a new bond, term deposit, or investment provider, call the institution they claim to represent using a number you found yourself, not one the caller gave you, and ask them directly whether that person and that offer are real. Fifth, if you've already sent money and something feels wrong, contact your bank and scam watch within the same day. The earlier a transfer is flagged, the narrower the window for it to move offshore, the way Yakimi Duprey's already was. Edward and Joan spent 60 years building what took a scammer 3 days to take. Has your bank ever asked you to confirm a payee's name before you sent money? Or did you only find out afterwards that it didn't? Tell me in the comments below.